Okay, I want you to try a quick mental exercise with me. If you're not driving, maybe close your eyes for a second and picture the word Buddhism. Where does your mind take you?
I think for most people, the default is a very specific image. You're probably seeing, what, snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas, maybe some prayer flags fluttering.
Totally. Or you're picturing the humid green jungles of Southeast Asia, golden stupas in Thailand, that sort of thing.
Right. It's warm. It feels a world away.
Exactly. Well, today we are going to completely tear up that postcard. We're taking a hard left turn and heading north, way north.
To the banks of the Neva River in St. Petersburg, Russia.
Which is definitely not the first place or even the 50th place most people would associate with the Dharma.
Not at all.
But our deep dive today is based on this really fascinating transcript from the State Hermitage Museum. It's called The Jewel in the Lotus, Art of Tibetan Buddhism.
And our mission, really, is to unpack a slice of history that almost feels like alternate fiction.
It really does. We're going to get into how Buddhism became an official religion in Tsarist Russia, a profoundly orthodox Christian empire, and how this temple, which is just this mashup of Art Nouveau and ancient Tibet, ended up in St. Petersburg.
Yeah, the story challenges a lot of assumptions. The scale here is immense. I mean, we're spanning from, what, ancient India in the 6th century BC?
All the way to the court of Catherine the Great, and then finally to the collections of the Hermitage Museum itself.
Oh.
It's a real collision of worlds.
It is. So before we get to the empresses and the, granite architecture, we probably need to lay a little groundwork. The source starts with the basics.
Right, Shakyamuni Buddha.
Yes, but the source makes a point here that I think often gets missed. It emphasizes what came before he was the Buddha. It says he went through more than 500 rebirths.
That number just always gets me. 500 lives.
At least. The texts say he was animals, he was humans, rich, poor. The key thing isn't just the number, it's the mechanism. In every single one of those lives, he was accumulating good deeds.
It's like a cosmic bank account of merit.
That's a great way to put it. It took eons to save up enough spiritual currency to finally become the enlightened one.
And the core philosophy he landed on is, what, the headline that everyone knows.
Life is suffering.
Right.
And it sounds so bleak when you just say it like that, but yeah. The teaching is that life is suffering because of desire, because of craving. If you can eliminate that craving, you're free.
But, and this is the key for our deep dive, how you get free isn't one size fits all. The source breaks it down into 3 main vehicles, or paths.
Yeah, and you really need to get this to understand why this specific type of Buddhism ends up in Russia. They're not all the same. So first you have the foundational path, Hinayana or Theravada.
That's what you see in Thailand, Sri Lanka, places like that.
Exactly. And the ideal figure here is the Arhat.
Okay, what's an Arhat?
An Arhat is a monk who's focused on the internal battle. They're trying to overcome their own anger, their own passion, their own delusion. It's all about self-liberation. You could say it's, I'm going to do the work to get myself out of this cycle.
Okay, so path 1 is individual salvation. You're saving yourself from the burning building.
Perfect analogy. Then you have the second path, Mahayana, the great vehicle. This is what you see in China, Korea, Japan. And here, the ideal figure shifts dramatically. It's not the Arhat anymore, it's the Bodhisattva.
And the Bodhisattva is more of a spiritual hero?
In a way, yes. A Bodhisattva is someone who gets to the very edge of Nirvana. They've done all the work. They could leave.
But they don't.
They refuse, they turn back, they actually take a vow to stay in the cycle of existence until every single other living being is saved first.
That is a massive shift. One is I'm getting out, and the other is I'm not leaving till everyone else is safe.
Exactly. But then we have the third path, and this is the one that flourished in Tibet, Mongolia, and eventually Russia. It's called Vajrayana.
The source called this the Thunderbolt Way.
Yes. Vajra means diamond scepter or thunderbolt. Think about a thunderbolt. It's sudden. It's incredibly high energy.
And dangerous.
And dangerous. The other paths see enlightenment as this thing that takes eons. Countless lifetimes of slow, gradual work. Vajrayana, which is the tantric tradition, basically says, no, we can do this now.
In a single lifetime.
In a single lifetime. It's a shortcut, but a very high-stakes one. It uses complex rituals, visualizations. It's intense. And this is the potent version of Buddhism that makes its way into the Russian Empire.
Which brings us to the Russia connection.
Yeah.
I have to say, when I read the source, I had to double-check the date. I mean, Tsarist Russia, you just think Orthodox Christianity. Exclusively.
Right. The Tsar was the head of the church.
But the source says Buddhism was an official religion.
It was, and we can thank Empress Catherine II for that, Catherine the Great.
This was in 1761. This seems incredibly early.
It is. So the story goes that a Buryat spiritual leader, a man named Agvan Dorzhiev, came to the court. Now, just try to visualize that meeting for a second.
Right. You've got the dazzling, European-style court in St. Petersburg, wigs, silk, French, everywhere.
And in walks this monk from the wilds of Siberia. The culture clash must have been immense.
I can't even imagine.
But Catherine was, above all, a pragmatist. She knew her empire was vast and diverse. She wasn't just conquering land, she had to manage populations. So she issued a decree.
What did it do?
It established the title of Pandito Kambo Lama. It essentially made him the official head of the Lamaist church in eastern Siberia.
So it was legitimized by the state.
From that moment on, it wasn't just some tolerated superstition, it was recognized. And it flourished in places like Kalmykia, Buryatia, and Tuva. These became Buddhist strongholds inside the Russian Empire.
Okay, so it's bubbling away in the east, but that's still thousands of miles from the capital. How do we get from Siberian recognition to a massive granite Buddhist temple in St. Petersburg?
That leap happens in the early 20th century, and it's largely because of one man, Agvan Dorzhiev.
And who was he?
He is one of those figures who just seems to be everywhere at once. He was a Buryat Lama, but he wasn't just any monk. He was the tutor and philosophical debate partner to the 13th Dalai Lama.
Wow, so he had the direct ear of the leader of Tibetan Buddhism.
He was his closest confidant. So Dorzhiev comes to St. Petersburg and has this idea. If Buddhism is an official religion of the empire, it deserves a physical presence in the capital. It was about representation.
And he had the political clout to pull it off.
He did. This was during the Great Game, Russia and Britain vying for influence in Asia. He was a valuable asset. He got permission to build a Datsan, a temple.
And this is where the story gets so visually spectacular. I was looking at photos of the St. Petersburg Datsan, and it's disorienting. It doesn't look like it's from Lhasa, but it doesn't look Russian either.
It's this incredible hybrid. And get this, the building committee wasn't just monks. It was this sort of Avengers team of Russian intellectuals.
Like who?
You had famous Orientalists like Oldenburg, the painter Nicholas Roerich was involved, and you had civil engineers like Berezovsky and Baranovsky.
Do you have Russian engineers trying to interpret these ancient Tibetan architectural rules?
Yeah. Exactly. And you can see it in the building. You have the classic Tibetan silhouette, the four walls narrowing toward the top, the flat roof, but it's made of rough-hewn granite, glazed bricks.
That's that northern modern style, right? The St. Petersburg version of Art Nouveau.
It is. It's this heavy, sturdy northern style wrapping around an ancient Tibetan structure. It's designed for snow and ice, not the Himalayas. And there's one detail the source mentions about the light inside the main hall, the dugan, that I just love.
The skylight lantern.
Yes. If you stand inside, you'll notice something odd. There are no windows in the walls at eye level.
None. So where does the light come from?
It comes from above. They built this huge stained glass ceiling lantern, so that the light just falls vertically. It creates this unbelievably ethereal atmosphere. You're cut off from the street and light is coming down to you.
That sounds magical. And the whole temple faces north.
Towards the mythical land of Shambhala.
Of course it does. Okay, so we have the temple. But the source also talks about this huge interest in collecting the East. Why was St. Petersburg society so obsessed with Tibetan art right at this time?
Well, context is everything. In the early 20th century, Orientalism was a huge trend across Europe. But in St. Petersburg, it had this sort of scientific and mystical edge. You had the Badmayev brothers, who were doctors, translating the Gyushi, the main text of Tibetan medicine.
So it wasn't just decorative. They were looking for knowledge.
They were. And where there's fascination, there are collectors. The source highlights a guy named Esper Ukhtomsky.
A huge figure in this story.
Massive. He was a chamberlain to the Tsar, and when Nicholas II was still the heir, the Tsarevich Ukhtomsky went with him on his grand tour of the East.
A royal road trip to Asia.
Basically. And they visited these Buryat monasteries, and because it was the future Tsar, they were given incredible gifts, mostly silver sculptures, which were kept in the Winter Palace.
So the Tsar himself had Buddha statues in his home.
He did. And Ukhtomsky became this massive collector. He gathered over 1,000 items. His collection was so significant, it won a gold medal at the 1900 Paris World Fair.
So this Russian aristocrat was the one who introduced high-quality Tibetan art to Europe.
He was the bridge. And it wasn't just him. The source drops some big names. Agathon Fromberg.
Son of the famous jeweler who made the eggs.
The very same. He collected bronze figures, and Yuri Rorich, the painter's son, he collected fankas, those scroll paintings.
Yeah.
It seems like everyone who was anyone was looking east.
But let's get into the objects themselves, because there's a section in the source about how these statues were actually made, and it kind of blew my mind. I just assumed they were, molded.
Well, they were cast, but the technique is everything. For centuries, they used the lost wax method.
Okay, walk us through that. Why lost?
So you start by sculpting a perfect model out of wax, every single detail. Then you cover that wax model in clay to make a hard shell. Right. Then you heat the whole thing up, the wax melts and runs out, it's lost. It leaves this perfect negative space inside the clay. You pour molten bronze into that space.
And then you get the statue out.
But here's the kicker. To get the statue out, you have to break the clay mold.
Oh, so you can never use the same mold twice.
Never.
Mm.
Every single statue is a one-off, unique. It wasn't until later, in China, they developed reusable molds for mass production. But those older pieces in the Hermitage, each one is singular.
But making the statue is only half the story. The source gets into the ritual side, and this is where it gets really specific. A statue isn't just a decoration. It has to be alive.
This is a crucial concept. You don't just cast a Buddha and stick it on a shelf. At that point, it's just a piece of metal. It's an empty shell. It has to be consecrated.
Which means putting things inside it.
Yes. The statues are hollow. The monks would wait for an auspicious day. You can't just do this on a random Tuesday. And they fill the statue from the bottom up.
With what?
A tree of life, which is usually a wooden axis wrapped in scrolls with mantras. They pack it with texts, relics, sometimes grains. But here's the detail that really stuck with me. They also pack it with incense.
For the smell.
For practicality, actually. The incense is there to prevent insects from living inside the statue.
That is actually really smart. You don't want your deity becoming an ant farm.
Exactly. It preserves the sanctity of the interior, and after it's all filled, they perform the opening of the eyes ceremony. That is the moment the deity is invited to inhabit the form. Before that, it's sculpture. After that, it's a presence.
So when we see these in a museum, to a practitioner, they're still considered alive.
The consecration doesn't expire.
The source mentions there are over 10,000 deities in the pantheon.
It's an unbelievably complex system, but the most important one, the one that gives our deep dive its title, is Avalokiteshvara.
The Bodhisattva of compassion.
Right, and his mantra is one you've probably heard, even if you don't know what it means, Om Mani Padme Hum.
The jewel in the lotus.
Exactly, and the source explains that this mantra isn't just a pretty phrase. Each syllable is an address to beings in all 6 worlds of Buddhist belief. It's a call for universal compassion.
It's amazing how that ancient mantra connects all the way to a granite building in St. Petersburg. And speaking of that, the Datsan isn't just a museum piece today, is it?
No, and that's so important. After a very turbulent 20th century for Russia, the temple is active again. The source says there are 21 lamas working there now. They give lectures, they lead meditations, they perform rituals.
It's a living tradition.
It is. And the education to become one of those lamas is, well, intense. Traditional monastic education starts at age 6.
6 years old.
Imagine that. You're just starting to memorize philosophy, Tibetan medicine, astrology. You don't just get to wear the robes. You have to earn the knowledge through years of memorization and debate.
There was a quote at the end of the source from a modern Lama Tarthang Tulku that I think just sums this all up perfectly.
I know the one you mean. He said that to understand Tibetan art, you first have to understand yourself and your place in the world.
If you claim to fully understand the art, you have effectively reached enlightenment.
It's such a powerful statement. It tells you that we're not supposed to look at these statues as just pretty objects. They're tools.
So let's bring this all back. We started with the Thunderbolt Path. We traveled to the court of Catherine the Great. We walked through a temple that looks like, Art Nouveau architects went backpacking in Tibet.
And we looked inside the statues to find scrolls and incense to keep the bugs out.
It just shows you how interconnected everything is. You can't separate Russian histories from the history of the East. It's all woven together.
And it challenges how we think about art. In the West, we so often view art as something to be admired from the outside. We stand back, we look, we judge the technique.
We keep our distance.
Exactly. But in this tradition, the art is meant to be a mirror. When you look at a fierce deity with 10 arms and 3 eyes, you're not just supposed to say, wow, nice bronze casting. You're supposed to ask what that image triggers in you. Is